So when you look at these problems here, checking the first one, okay, we have a set of coordinates and we have an amplitude. Okay? So we were told here that this is a minimum point. So when you look at the 9.5 value, the minimum is the y coordinate. So that is going to be your minimum. So if there's an amplitude of 6.4, what does that mean the midline, where does that mean the midline has to be located? Okay, how would you set this up? Okay, so if we were to kind of sketch what we have just down here, let's say this is, 9.5, right, is our lowest point, right? That means that our amplitude moves it up 6.4. And so what would this midline be? Correct. What you'd have to do is take your 9.5, you add 6.4 to it, and that gives you your total of 15.9. Okay, remember, the formula way to solve this is that the minimum is equal to the midline, which we use d as our variable, but d minus the absolute value of a. And so if you set this up, the minimum is 9.5. The midline, I'll go ahead and call d again, minus the absolute value of 6.4. Okay? And so if we add 6.4 to both sides, we get our midline. Okay? So when we look at the second example, again, it might be you might be given the maximum in the mid and the amplitude. You might be given the min and the max. Okay, like you are in this second example. So in the second example, you have a maximum at negative 1.3, a minimum at negative 2.7, and you want to find the midline. And so now the midline is going to be located where between those two extreme points? It's going to be the average of those, right? So what we're going to do here is we take the average. So when we find the average of these, negative 1.3 plus a negative 2.7, divide by 2, right? The average is the sum of the values divided by 2, or the number of values that are being combined. And so here, if you combine these, you get a negative 4 over 2, which gives you your overall equation for the midline to be y equals negative 2. Now, what you can see here is you can test it and see, does it make sense that if you have an equation at y equals negative 2, is that the same distance from negative 2.7 as it is from negative 1.3? It's 0.7 units up, 0.7 units down. So once again, you could find what the amplitude is by using that relationship, but here we're just locating the midline.